And then Fred, did you want me to share the presentation, or were you able to share it on your screen?
You can actually share it if you like on the screen. If it doesn't work, we can send it to everybody that's on there and or distribute it after today's presentation.
Okay, I think I can get it up here. Alrighty. Can everybody see it?
Nice.
All right, guys. So we'll have Nathan, Jamie, and Fred. Each will be talking for about 20 minutes on preparedness. And just let me know when to advance to the next slide.
Very good. So I want to say thank you for having us here today and allowing us a moment to introduce our model, which we call BMP. It is both a model and a program as well as a company. And you can see on the slide here, we deal in 4 different areas. Preparedness, where we do trainings and all kinds of sharing of how the model actually works. We call that our VECC, Volunteer Emergency Command Center program. We have the VCOM, Volunteer Emergency Communications. We train and coordinate primarily on ham radio communication network, primarily with ARES, ACS, DCS, and the Highway Patrol. We have our response group, which is in charge of our VPODs, Volunteer Emergency Points of Distribution, 20-foot shipping containers that are stocked with prepaid, pre-positioned relief items, such as first aid, food, water, coffee. We have to have coffee. And then our 4th, which is the relief. This is where we actually set up, which we are not doing at this time, a donation receipt area. So we have 2 facets going on there. One, people dropping off donations. The second, people picking up donations. So Jamie's going to talk a little bit more about all of that. But the main purpose of Be More Prepared when we started some 16 years ago, and what we've really worked on in the last 7 or 8 years, was to deploy with pre-positioned, prepaid disaster relief supplies in the first hours, and especially in the first 72 hours. So phase 1, we call that. And that's where immediately we open the pods, start communications with our fulfillment network and other pods and all of our volunteers. And Fred's going to talk about how we work with volunteers, trained volunteers, and spontaneous volunteers. The primary mission of what we were creating, what we were mandated or creating to do, was to solve the second disaster. And I'm sure all of you in the COAD and VOADs understand that whenever we got involved in donations management, everybody cringed. And everybody cringed for a very good reason. They could never control it. It always took over. And by the time that you were activated, you were deployed, and you became on scene, it was too late. Everything was already out of control. So under our model, again, that's where Jamie heads up things. We deploy and start to prevent the second disaster in the first moments by inventory control, inventory management, et cetera, and so on. The first thing that we really do is start our communications, start that immediateness of contact with the net so that we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing. And I think that is also a very, very big element so that we can maximize our available and combined resources of time, energy, and dollars. I know I'm skipping around, but we are in the donations management business 24/7. It's what we do. Jamie's background is over 30 years in liquidations, negotiations. Mine is over 30 or maybe more than 30. I'm not going to say anymore. With the government, in as far as auctions, major government auctions for the federal government. So when we started working together, we combined that and created a viable warehousing, bartering, sales operation for donations. And in the donations business, There are all kinds of donations. We get donations in and out every day. The bottom line is about 20% of the donations that we actually receive can be used for disaster response and relief, meaning they are face masks, like, well, I don't know if you can see, but anyway, we have face masks, gowns, water, food products, first aid, on and on. About 80%, give or take, we cannot use. Teaching materials, shoes, wood, all kinds of industrial machinery. And that is where we put to use our barter and trade, because we can take those products, trade them for products that we're looking for and that are on our wish list, and or we know is on one of our trading partners' wish list, and thereby the most important thing occurs: we have the supplies and the assets when we need them, and we can deploy them. And under our system, we have these in a pre-positioned, prepaid mode. And the importance of that is they're already there. So when people are congregating, they can congregate at this area where we already know how to set up. And secondly, we already know how to get trucks in and out and deploy there. And that is our primary mode, and what we are starting to communicate on and everything else. The main essence of what we do is under the definition of the government, the Cal OES's, CSTI's, public-private sector partnerships. So I think it was maybe 5 years ago, we took a 2-day course, our whole team, and on public-private sector partnerships. So we feel we've incorporated the best of the public sector with the best of the private sector, so that we are complementary to what their mission is and us supporting it. As you can see, I'm wearing an LAPD hat. We work for a lot of the first responders. When I say work, support them in field, support them by helping to take over the donations management element so that they can do what it is they're deployed to do. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Jamie Pellegrini, and he's our Director of Logistics and Supplies Management. Jamie?
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? I wanted to talk a little bit about, mitigating the disaster and supply chain management.
I'm in the middle of a COAD meeting or a Zoom meeting. I'll call you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, then. So as you know, we have continuing disasters, and we will have continuing disasters. So what we want to do is, or what we do is, we want to mitigate these disasters the best way we know how. Right now, what's going on because of the COVID, we're trying to mitigate transportation. So right now, transportation, if you know transportation, all the prices have gone up because everybody is vying for the trucking industry. They want their products shipped. So the federal government shipping, and then you have the private sector shipping, the public sector. I mean, everybody is trying to ship supplies wherever it's needed. So in a disaster, what happens is you will have an increased trucking rate. You will also have a lack of transportation to get your goods or services or whatever you need to the right place. So how we go ahead is we try to mitigate stuff like that. So what we try to do is have pre-positioned warehouses with emergency supplies throughout the cities and counties and the state. So what that does is, for instance, with this COVID, they had a lack of masks and they had a lack of gloves. In our warehouse, we pre-positioned, before this all happened, several truckloads of masks and gloves and sanitizer and things like that that we sent out immediately to the different communities, the nonprofits, like the Buddha Suchi, and we do stuff in the different counties, from San Diego all the way to Sonoma. We send stuff to the county of Sonoma. We even send stuff to the state of Wisconsin because they needed some PPEs. So, and we also work with FEMA on this. So, you know, you want to have some systems, effective systems in place to get, you know, to pre-position so you have goods and services, so you could stabilize your product and lifeline to the different cities and communities. You know, the other thing as far as pre-positioning product in warehouses, we do that. We're trying to get different warehouses donated to us throughout the state so we can pre-position products. There's a lot of products that we get from companies that are short dated, let's say. What we do is we re-assay them, and they're usually 5 to 10 years. You know, you have 5 to 10 years more life on the product, so you could continue to use them. If anybody knows about MREs, you know, MREs last almost indefinitely. And we have a stockpile of MREs that we have. And then periodically when we have as Nathan was saying, the voluntary points of distribution, the VPODs, the 20-foot connexes, we go in there and we have an inventory system that we periodically rotate the system of inventory. So the other thing is we always try to prevent the disaster after the disaster. So for instance, let's say the Woolsey fire. So when we did the donations management for the Woolsey fire, we had several locations where we were collecting donations. So usually people drop off donations, they drop off clothing, they drop off stuff that we really don't need. What we did was we gave the mayor a list of stuff we needed. He presented that on a PSA, and what we did was we got just the items we needed. The items that we don't needed, some of our partners like Salvation Army and the Goodwill and like the clothing, we had them send the clothing, and so you don't have that pile up of clothing that you get inundated. The other thing we do is we have a mass amounts of volunteers that show up. So we have different coordinators that manage the volunteers and show different volunteers what to do, how to do it, and how to prepare the donations. And we bring in I would say 30 to 40 Gaylords, which are 4x4x4 containers. We palletize them. When the donations come in, now we're easily separated. We do like 2 or 3 lines of those. So as the line gets filled, then they get pallet jacked to the truck, which they puts in the truck and then goes to the prospective warehouse. So this way you never have the disaster after the disaster. And as the truck gets filled, wherever the donations are needed, you know, whether it's wipes, whether it's sanitizer, things like that, diapers, we could go ahead and distribute it to any place, anywhere. So that's primarily, you know, what we do as far as disasters and trying to stabilize the product lifelines. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, let me introduce Fred Mercer.
I'm going to do it.
Or Nathan.
Thank you, Jamie. Now I'd like to introduce Fred Mercer. So for our category called spontaneous volunteer management. So we have 3 different types of volunteers that we coordinate. Spontaneous volunteers, which are just people who show up and want to help, trained volunteers, and team member volunteers. So Fred is going to talk to you about that. He's our national coordinator for Eagle Scout Parents, ESP, Emergency Survival Preparedness. Here, Fred.
Thank you, Nathan. Good morning, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about how we get volunteers involved in our whole program. And I guess it starts where it starts really at is at the beginning of our VPOD program. And again, VPOD stands for Volunteer Emergency Point of Distribution. This is the heart of our collection and storage of vital supplies within each of the communities. So where we start is first we decide where a good location would be to put one of these VPODs. And what we're looking for is an involved community and also a secured area where we can put it. So for example, right now, we have several of our VPODs located by Salvation Army units. We have several of them near churches where they can be in a secured area, and there's a community of concerned people that are willing to be prepared and trained so that in the event of an emergency, they know exactly what to do. These shipping containers that we use are 20-foot shipping containers. Once we get them delivered, one of the groups that we get involved immediately is scouting. And we get prospective Eagle Scouts that are looking for projects. They help us in preparing these shipping containers for storage. So what they do for their Eagle project is they put in venting, they put in a whirlybird fan, they put in solar panels on the roof, they put in lighting inside, and then they put a limited amount of shelving because we'd like to put a variety of pallets and some shelved items inside our VPODs. Once those shipping containers, then the VPODs are prepared, then if the Eagle Scout has any money left, they will buy a few supplies. From there, we then fill the remainder of the VPODs. And part of the process of the Eagle Project is making sure they understand how their project fits in with the community that they're serving. And some training goes on right at that very time so that in the event of a disaster, they would know exactly how to distribute the products to the local community. At the same time, we also involve our ham radio operators because some of the Eagle projects have been involved in setting up VCOM areas. And in this scenario, what the Eagle Scout does is prepare an area near the VPOD that is set up with ham radio, ham radio, and the communication tower. In this way, if all power is lost, all communications, cell phones are lost, there would still be able to be communication very close by the VPOD. And in this case, they would then know if supplies are needed in another area or if they need supplies. We also have been involved more recently with the California Conservation Corps. And by getting them involved, and these are youngsters between the ages of 18 and 24, we have been teaching them about the Be More Prepared model and having them understand the entire flow of how products get to the VPODs itself. And we also do some training as far as how they would distribute these in the event of a disaster. So this is kind of just gives you an overview of the types of people that we're becoming involved with. And to me, one of the most important aspects of it is the prepaid and pre-positioned aspect. It's going to be very difficult, especially if transportation becomes an issue. It's going to be very difficult to get products out to the areas where they're needed. But in my case, We have a location more than a mile from my house. So I will know that if I need some supplies, I know exactly where to go. And that's what we're training other people as well. So now I'll turn it back over to Nathan.
Thank you, Fred. So I'd just like to summarize the three parts in a couple of bottom line issues. One, we are not a consulting firm or a marketing firm like that. So we focus on partnerships, mutually beneficial working relationships, and how to incorporate what we feel is the base of what we're doing that is common to everyone, and then focus on what we call individualized needs. So what does your community need that maybe no other community needs? The differences between urban and rural, the difference between independent communities of 600 to 1,800 people are quite different than small communities of 80,000. Everybody always asks us, how many people can we take care of? Our answer is pretty much how many are coming. So we don't evaluate it on that basis because we can have a fulfillment system, and less people we can share more people we share less until we're restocked. So I think that's our story, and you can find the information about us either on this PowerPoint, which is either going to be here or we can have sent to you, or go to our website, atasteofpreparedness.com. And I guess at this point, we can take it one-on-one, or all three of us, any questions that anybody has.
Thank you so much, you guys, for providing this presentation. It was really informative. I guess my first question is, do you have any of these VPODs, or have you ever responded in Orange County area before, or is that why you're here looking for some partnership opportunities?
A very good question. We have worked in Orange County before. Fred and I, for almost 2 years, headed up the volunteer aspect of the exploring program for the Boy Scout Council in that area. We have sent, I forget the name, but I think a past COAD president, James was his first name, I think. He was the fire chief. Anyway, he did come out and visit with us, and we really had all the great intentions, and then somehow he retired, and we had other things, and sorry we haven't been there, but we're ready to come now.
Fabulous. And any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I believe he was referring to Jim Ellis.
That is correct, Jim Ellis, and we great contact. And at the time, it was not only for Be More Prepared, but I was on the executive board of NLA, the Los Angeles County VOAD.
Hey, Fred, this is Kevin MacArthur from the County Emergency Management. I have a question on how your model works in, looks like most of it in Los Angeles. Is it a needs request from individual cities, or like the city of Los Angeles, or with the county level, or how are you requesting, or jurisdictions requesting your services, or is it a contract services?
So that's a very good question, Kevin. Here's the situation. We are working throughout the state of California, and even shipping disaster supplies into Arizona and parts of Nevada, and I assume that we'll get requests. We work, and the reason we work so well with the VOAD and a COAD is these are nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, private sector, and public sector departments and agencies. So part of the benefit of a public-private sector partnership is we are already empowered to move to action, which is support at our discretion. So we definitely are an independent volunteer emergency response group until IC takes us under their wing, meaning then we report 100% to the incident command and follow their directions. So basically we update them. They tell us where they feel we are needed most, and we respond.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thanks.
Okay. Do you know Abby Browning in the Public-Private Sector Partner Division of Cal OES?
Sounds familiar, but I'm not personally known.
Well, she's very familiar with everything that we're doing, our coordination with Cal OES, EOC, and with FEMA Disaster Response Donations Group.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm a pastor at First Christian Church of Orange. It's totally my first time jumping into this this group's meeting. I'm curious if the VPODs are existing structures, like a trailer or something that would be delivered to an organization willing to have the VPOD on their property, or if it's something that the organization provides.
That's a very good question, Michelle. It's a combination of any and all of that. So what we look for is if we're contacted and we have an empty pod on our property, then we can work to turn it into one of our supply pods. If they say we have a space, then we can put it, and then we can have it delivered in position. A couple of others actually have rooms like pantries that we use, so we don't even need to bring a container onto the property. And what we're looking for now is available warehouse space where we can use that as a point of distribution, and then work with a church like First Christian to help monitor it in that area, which means when it's time under the program, you would go over, you would open it, and then you would work with the other, your constituency and the other organizations in the area. Not that you have to maintain it or do it, but the one thing we have to do is have access to it and have at least one person that opens it up so that immediately others can come and get what they need in the quickest time frame, because at some point lives are at stake. But in every case, people are, my house burned down, I can't find my dog, my husband got hurt, an endless thing, which are all valid. And our job is to, I can't help you with that. Here's a safe place. Here's a blanket. Here's a cup. You want a cookie? Here's some coffee. If you need something, let us know. When we find out something, we will be proactive and bring that information to you. So you don't have to keep coming up and asking. That really, really, really makes a big difference in an evacuation center or in situations like that, wherever people are congregating. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thanks. And I'm guessing, are you looking for different sizes or options then as well in terms of the amount of space, or is there a kind of minimum room or space size that is helpful?
Well, ultimately, the minimum is the size of the container, which is 20 feet long, 10 feet wide. Is it 8 or 10 feet high?
8 feet high.
8 feet high. So the issue is we can put it into tight spots, but the delivery driver, you know, the easier we can back it in and set it down, because once you set it down, we don't move it. So we want to set it down. The main criteria is access to the door, and is it a level situation? So we don't like to put it on gravel, because when it gets wet, things sink. Now you can't open the door. So we try not to have that happen. Well, we're pretty flexible. The one policy that we do employ is the policy of rigid flexibility.
Nice.
We made that up. So I don't know if we made that up or somebody told us that at a Boy Scout camporee many years ago, but actually, whenever we get stressed in a kind of a command situation, that helps a lot. Okay, this is how we practiced. This is what the book said, but this is what we need to do. Jamie says, this is what I can do, and that's what we do.
Super, thank you.
And Lane Calvert, do you know Lane Calvert? He was out there with the Boy Scouts for many, many years and worked in emergency and disaster preparedness in Orange County.
Right. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, you mentioned the spontaneous volunteers, how that works and how we might be able to tap into that type of resource.
Very good. You know, I'll take that since I'm sitting here, but here's the concept. The concept is to create a system of services that can be readily deployed, also easily copied, so that we can duplicate it wherever we go. So when you start looking for common elements, and a common element in that area called volunteers, two of those types of categories. One is scouting. In the category of scouting, we have Eagle Scout candidates. So in order for an Eagle Scout to complete the road and the mission, they have to do an Eagle Scout project. And they have to come up with one. And the two ongoing criteria are they must provide organization and leadership. So we have created an emergency and disaster response opportunity, and they come in and talk about. So right now, for instance, when we have two Eagle Scout candidates doing, right now, one is redoing our Volunteer Emergency Command Center in Chatsworth, and the other one is doing our communication center in Chatsworth. So these will become fully operational, and they will be the third. So we have three service operational centers, and we have three VCOM centers that we can open and respond right away. So we give them a basic guideline. But the bottom line is, when the Eagle Scout candidate comes in, then they bring mom and dad, they bring the troop, they bring the district, they bring their friends and relatives, and now they all know that we have this. So the idea is, our Be More Prepared came from the Boy Scout to be prepared. And in our feeling, Boy Scouts are a very, very key group in order to respond to community preparedness and volunteers and community service. So, and they're in every community that we're all in. Another group is now military. We work with exploring units of the U.S. Army, primarily California Army National Guard, primarily exploring units that are in that area. So not all exploring units. And now, as Fred said, we're setting up working with Conservation Corps. And these are 18 to 24-year-olds that are looking to help get into the community, do service, but at the same time, find a career, get a job, make some money. So they're everywhere. I mean, they're all over. So when we do that, we can share what we learned in Chatsworth with what you need in Orange County. We can go to the First Christian Church of North Hollywood and of what city? Anyway, the First Christian Church in Orange County, and we start to work with them, and then we start this process. So then we would contact a local troop or the Boy Scout Council and say, we're looking for an Eagle Scout candidate. Then we would go to the troop, then they would go through the process, and in that process, they would work with the church about what needs to be done and us on how to do it. But then they would have to complete that project. And then when it comes into loading and unloading, we can involve our ham radio operators, our military veterans, our community service groups like Rotary and Kiwanis, or the other associations that are centric to emergency preparedness, or BOADs and COADs. And then they can not only help get the job done, they now know it's a resource for them. and more people get involved. They just passed me a note. Ham radio operator. So the one thing that we do when you talk about volunteers is when people know there's something to volunteer for, and they know the people they're doing it for, and they know what to do when they get there. So that's what we really do, so that when we have to support our first responders in the field, and we have to support IC, we don't have time to explain to people what we're doing. You know, it's like any command. We are first and foremost, get the job done, make sure you take care of people and prevent people from becoming victims. Those are the prime, and feed them. Once people get fed, their whole attitude changes. You know, so it's a big part of what we do is to help people know that we do care, and we're trying, and we're here. It's not coming in 6 hours. It's here right now. I got 2 thumbs up, so I guess I'm doing okay. Jamie, you want to say, you have anything to add?
No.
Fred?
Do you have any questions?
Anything else?
Going once, going twice.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, guys, for telling us a little bit more about your model. It does seem like you all do a lot, and it's definitely a resource that I'd like to talk more to you about. And if anybody else wants to host one of these what are we calling it? Trailers?
VPOD. It's after the community points of distribution from FEMA. So we copied it and called it volunteer emergency points of distribution.
Great. We'll get your contact information out to the COAD list so that you can coordinate directly with these guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And we'll get the presentation out as well.